Testing.
Sounding good.
Welcome.
All right.
Morning, Tyler.
Morning, Mike. Where's my virtual bagel?
Right here with the virtual coffee and the bacon.
Oh, good.
Sorry, I virtually ate it.
Yeah, it's not the same as being in person, but we're getting close. All right, it is 7:30, and so I'm going to start the preliminaries, and people will probably straggle in. That's the way they do, but we're here and we're going. So I'll start with a good morning. I'm Mike Keese. I'm the Workforce Housing Coordinator here at Vital Communities, and I'd like to introduce Doreen Gillette. Please wave, Doreen. She's our tech host today, and will make things work for us. One of the things that's happening is we're recording, and Doreen is presenting the slides. And to make sure that everyone has access to this, we'll also be putting a link to the slides in the chat so you can follow along on your own. And Doreen, if you wouldn't mind doing that now and periodically as people come in, that'd be fantastic. And so we're going to kick off this morning with a welcome by Sarah Jackson, who is our Executive Director here at Vital Communities. We've been appreciating Sarah's leadership and partnership building since she joined this team in November last year, and it is so great that she can get us started today with this event. So Sarah, I'll hand over to you and off we go.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks to all of our partners who are joining us this morning and joining us in tackling the housing crisis in the Upper Valley. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. I'm hearing a little bit of background noise, so apologies if it's coming from me. It's an honor to be here, and I'm delighted that so many diverse members of our community are committing time and energy to tackle this shared challenge. Vital Communities' mission is to engage Upper Valley people, communities, and organizations to create equitable solutions to our region's challenges. We've known for years that our current systems for the development of homes are not meeting our needs. And the COVID pandemic has made that chronic challenge an acute crisis. Today's breakfast will present multiple examples for businesses, nonprofits, towns, and residents of all ages and circumstances to lead and support the creation of the homes we need. The solutions you'll hear about this morning are as varied as the resources and needs of our communities, but they have two things in common. First, imagination and commitment to tackle this challenge. And second, confidence in our neighbors that we can and will meet this challenge together. Thank you again for being here. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Sarah. Doreen, if you can pop up the agenda slide, I'll talk us through this morning's events. Great, thank you. As you can see, our agenda this morning starts with the big picture. The Keys to the Valley project takes a look at where we are today and the changes that we need to bring about over the next decade. It also shows us the roles that we can play in making those changes and some of the resources that can help us. So very much looking forward to hearing about that project. We're then going to take a look at 5 examples of change that are happening right now. These are solutions that we can expand and replicate in our region. Then it's your turn. We'll use the Q&A time to clarify and explore how we can implement the dozens of solutions that are laid out in Keys, including the examples that we highlight this morning. So we'll hold all the questions to the end. And if your questions arise during the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll talk about them during the Q&A. We're going to wrap up the Q&A with a summary of next steps and how we'll be able to measure our shared progress. And then we're going to close out this morning by highlighting that we have the power to do this together. So you can follow along on the screen with the slides. Doreen's going to put a link to the chat a link to the slides in the chat, so you can also open up your own version at home. And I think if you're all ready, I suspect Kevin Geiger is. Kevin, you all set?
Yes.
Then away we go. Keys to the Valley.
Okay. Good morning, everybody out there. Hope you've had your virtual muffin and your real coffee or your decaf, whatever. My name is Kevin. I'm from the Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission. And with me this morning, which you'll hear in a minute, is Olivia from the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission and Jason from the Mount Ascutney Regional Commission. We're going to talk very briefly about the Keys to the Valley project, which has been done by us three commissions over the last 2 years. And this is just like a teaser. There is a full movie awaiting out there later for you. And if you want to go to the next slide, Mike. Oh, back one. Yeah, so I just want to note that we're very grateful to our whole series of advisors and our funders, without which we can't do this project. You know, this is a pretty heavy duty lift for the last couple of years. And so one more slide, Mike. Yep. This is just a map of the area we cover. So the 3 regional planning commissions cover 67 towns and cities, and this is the entire area for the Keys to the Valley project, roughly 163,000 people. And we set out to identify 3 problems. The first thing is what we usually do is, what's the housing needs out there? So what's the problem? The other parts that were unusual are what are the solutions out there, and then which solutions really fit our areas. And we'll have several examples today, but you can find many more at the Keys to the Valley website. Next one. This, I think, is the key takeaway. It's not a surprise, but it's something that we keep beating the drum on. And so this is our first key understanding, is that we're in a housing crisis and it's getting worse. It's not getting better. And before any of us can address any issue in our lives, you have to face it squarely and you have to acknowledge it. And we have many excellent people and programs in place around affordable housing in the region. And I want to stress that. And they have done a lot and saved a lot of heartache and housed a lot of people. And yet we still have to admit that we, the big we, not they, have done a dismal job of meeting the needs of our people in terms of affordable housing. And the big takeaway on that is 1/3 of our households, 23,000 households, are not affordably housed in the region right now. And to give you a sports analogy, if you miss the ball 1/3 of the time in baseball, you're actually a very good hitter. If you miss the ball 1/3 of the time in golf, you're a very bad golfer. And I want us to think that we're golfing here, folks. And only with that sense of how hard we need to improve our game will we come to the table with a resolve to make the changes that we need to be making. At the very high level, we need to triple the rate of construction of housing, roughly, out there. We need to almost by tenfold increase the rate of affordable housing. And by affordable housing, I don't just mean the standard HUD definition of affordability. I also mean what we call missing middle housing, or housing that is typically for the middle class. At the state level, we need to move tax policy to drive the behavior we want. At the local, we need to change zoning, invest in infrastructure like sewer and water, especially, and understand that a community houses all of its people or it does not succeed. And at the personal level, we just need to welcome the new neighbors across the street, the new house going up on the lot, that type of thing. Don't fear that, embrace that change. Next slide, not next slide, but yeah. These are, so we have 4 more key understandings. And this one is, it's not just a private problem. If a policeman can't find a home, it's a problem for the town. If a machinist can't find a home, it's a problem for their employer. So it's not just on the people out there. It's on, again, it's on all of us. Next one. Yep. Tough problem. Nobody else has solved this thing. We have looked and looked and looked. People have done a lot of work. They've solved a lot of bits, but nobody has solved this entirely. And so we have to acknowledge it's a serious issue. And I think one more. Yeah. New solutions are needed. Obviously, if you haven't fixed any problem, you need to do something differently than what you've been doing. So we're going to need to do some different things. And one more maybe. And we have a beautiful place. And we want to respect that place while we're solving the problem. So we want urgency, but we want care while we're doing this. Next slide. And at the Keys site, you'll see that we've grouped our what we want people to do into these 6 action areas. Each of these has a little plus on the side. If you hit that plus, a paragraph comes up. You can then dive deeper and deeper and deeper. There's actually 3 more layers below all of these, but we figured we'd start with the condensed versions and then people can expand as they need to. And we're going to have, as Mike said, 5 examples of things already being taken at the local level, which are, to me, a little novel, which is neat. But before we get down to those, Olivia is going to talk a little bit about where things might happen and why. And then Jason is going to talk a little bit about how and what it might actually look like. And then back to you, Mike.
Thanks, Kevin. Can everyone hear me okay? Making sure it's working. Great.
Sounds good.
Good morning. So I'm going to spend a few minutes sharing with you a couple of data points that highlight the types of homes our region needs and where they might go. So next, Mike. So this information is the focus of our housing challenge section on the Keys to the Valley website in case you want to find it. And it's likely not news to most of you that our region has a changing population. From 2010 to 2030, we could see an average 100% increase in people above the age of 65. Noted here in the bar graph, you can see with the green on the bottom, and a 15% decrease for age groups under 65, noted in the red. For our homes, this means 2 things. First, we need safe, affordable, and desirable homes for our older residents. And at the same time, we need to provide homes that are appropriate for younger workers. Many older residents want a home they can manage and maintain independence in, and young workers are trending to have no or fewer children, meaning smaller households, while also seeking to be close to desirable amenities that are often found in our village and downtown centers. Thus, for different reasons, both of these age groups are trending to smaller homes with access to more amenities and public infrastructure. This change in population is one of the main drivers for our projections model. With smaller households, more homes are needed for the same number of people. Thus, even though the population projections for 2030 show a population change of 10,000, this projection model also shows a projected 10,000 homes needed, which increases in almost every one of our 67 communities. Although not a crystal ball, this model does give us a sky level picture on likely needed growth in homes just to keep pace. In the last decade, we added approximately 4,000 new homes, as a reference point. This keeping pace does not take into account the current shortage of homes on the market, especially those that are affordable, as Kevin just discussed. Both the housing shortage and lack of affordable housing have been made worse during the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the Vermont Affordable Rental Housing Development Cost Factors report, the average cost to develop affordable housing was about $228,000 per unit. It would be a lot more now. At that level, it would cost about $2.3 billion to create 10,000 new homes. If we want to be better prepared for the next shock, we need to rely on another more incremental, more adaptive, and ultimately more resilient ways to create new homes. And next, please. The quality of life provided by the homes we live in not only informed by their access to amenities, as just discussed, but also their safety. With a significant number of homes that are older, many of which contain lead and other hazard, the safety of our residents is not always assured by having a home. For example, in New Hampshire, Grafton, and Sullivan counties, 1 of every 20 children that's screened shows elevated blood levels. This damage is not reversible with lifelong impacts. On another side of the dice, transportation costs play a significant role in the affordability of our homes. It is suggested that a household pay no more than 45% combined for housing and transportation. And in our region, the average household pays 55% for these costs, 25% of which comes from transportation. Integrated planning with needed infrastructure such as transportation will then be essential to our success in the future. Next. At the same time, we need to think about those that are most vulnerable. Based on regional survey results for providers of emergency and homes with supportive services, we estimate that they currently serve, from those who responded, 86 individuals. Their wait lists average between 25 to 100 individuals, and their current planned increased capacity is for 10 beds. Next. Simply said, I think these numbers speak for themselves. It's not enough. Looking at the landscape and planning at the landscape level and thinking about those integrated connections that are appropriate for land, for health, for buildings, and for our natural resources, we did a places for homes analysis to look at where are the suitable places to live. This is the final result of that map, and you can see quite a number of other maps on our website with interactive mapping and see your local context. But there are suitable places in every community, and every community has a role to play in moving this ball forward. Next. So just in summary, before I pass it off to Jason, the homes we need: emergency housing, affordable homes, homes with supportive services, homes with access to internet, to public transit that are walkable, homes that are accessible, smaller homes. And is this a challenge or an opportunity? I'm going to let Jason say more about which one that is. Off to you, Jason.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. We need, frankly, a lot more homes that look like this in the region. We need them in prices that folks can afford, and given the sort of the prevailing wage rates in the area. Our housing providers like Twin Pines, Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust, they do great work. We need them to continue doing that great work, but it's just simply not enough. So we need to do more than that. And I think, the developers are doing their thing, which is great, but again, not enough. So I think in some cases, us homeowners have to become developers too. And we need to create more housing like these photos, smaller homes, single level that might allow better aging in place, for example, micro unit apartments, tiny houses, maybe tiny house communities. We need more accessory dwelling units. We have an awful lot of older homes that are quite large with maybe one, maybe two folks living in it. Those could become a home share situation, or they could be converted into 2 or 3 units. We need a lot more of that. And we need a lot of what I call incremental, smaller scale infill. And next slide, please. That'll explain what I mean there a little bit. So as part of the KEYS project, we looked at what I'm calling infill. We looked at 3 areas in particular, Wilder being one of them here that we're looking at. And the common thing I hear from towns is, well, there's the village center's full, there's no room for more housing, and we wanted to show that that's not true. So here you're seeing a picture of Wilder that's showing some infill development. There's the highlighted buildings there. There's a combination of different things going on here, but what we wanted to do as an exercise, a completely theoretical exercise, is show that you could fairly easily create 27 new units in this scenario. And it doesn't really affect the character of the area. And anyway, so one of the things we're trying to do here is just help people visualize what change might look like. It doesn't look scary. And we're also trying to prioritize focusing that development in areas that are served by infrastructure, maybe where you can walk down to the store, get the bus, go to work, that sort of thing. And so, next slide, please. You know, as you've heard, the status quo isn't working. So, you know, we need to continue doing the things that we are doing well. We have to look at other ways of doing it. And so we looked at a number of different models. You're going to hear from some of them here very soon. But in the Keys project, you know, there's a whole lot more information in there. We wanted to throw out some models or some examples from other places that, and sometimes not away, sometimes they're local examples. Things that we might want to look at and either expand or and try to see if it'll fit for our region. A couple of examples here, or actually the one example here, Minnesota Equity Fund, or something similar, some sort of a regional public-private fund that could help to basically generate money and invest in housing for the area. And you'll hear a little bit more about thinking about that here in our neck of the woods. But in this case, in Minnesota, this fund has you know, helped out rehabilitating and creating homes for many folks. And then you're going to hear about in just a few minutes about some other examples that we're thinking about in the area. In particular, in my mind anyway, one of the things that's very interesting to me is like the Montpelier accessory dwelling unit pilot project, for example. And so that and a few others, you will hear from some other folks on that soon. Next slide, please. So it's a daunting problem, and but I think one of the things we want to try to highlight is that there are relatively easy things that we can do about it. And so one of those is regulatory reform. We know that, you know, getting your permits sometimes can be an issue, and there's definitely some easy things that we can all do, or our communities can work towards to help address it, or at least prevent you know, problems that aren't necessary. And so we're looking at a number of things, such as you know, density standards, dimensional standards, parking, and some other sort of easier fixes. And so the Keys project has a lot of information there. And we also do point to some other studies out there in the area that also help with that. Next slide, please. There we go. So one simple example, and there's more in there, but is basically a lot of zoning doesn't, the standards don't reflect what's on the ground today. You know, you couldn't build the village of Chester, for example, given if you're starting from scratch based on their existing regulations. So what we're really suggesting as one simple fix is just making sure that your the density standards meet what's on the ground today. And by allowing that, you're basically allowing, generally speaking, for more density. And if smaller, all things being equal, if smaller is cheaper, you know, you'll be able to create hopefully more affordable units, hopefully, as a result of that. Next slide, please. And here's an example. You know, if your community looks something like that in that picture, then, you know, maybe your standards should look something like that right next to it. And so, you know, again, just trying to fit the standards to what's on the ground today will help to some extent. And next slide, please. So that's really all, you know, we wanted to share with you, hitting highlights, but more importantly, we think it's important to hear from some of the some examples out there. And so, Mike, I guess back to you to get that started. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kevin and Jason and Olivia. The you know, Keys is getting a lot of attention across Vermont and across New Hampshire because so many people are ready to act, and they're looking for where they can make a difference. They're wondering how they can get engaged. And so I think we're pretty fortunate to have a plan that shows all these different ways that different stakeholders can act, that we can become people who are creating homes. That is not someone else's problem to solve, but it's ours. And that we have the power to do it and ways to do it. So thank you for that great work. So as you mentioned, let's take a look at some of the living examples of some of the strategies that you just described. And as we're going along, we'll be putting links in the chat to highlight where each of these particular examples fits within the overall KEYS plan. And so our first example is going to be a group that's taking action right now, called the Corporate Council. And that Corporate Council is comprised of the major employers in our area. And this group came together because they're committed to the long-term vitality of our communities. Clay Adams chairs that Corporate Council, and he's going to tell us about an emerging effort to support home affordability. So I'll pass it over to you, Clay.
Thanks, Mike. And thank you, Jason, Olivia, and Kevin. Your work really frames the problem and suggests solutions. It is really striking to me that we're going to need 10,000 more homes by 2030, 2.5 times what we've done in the past decade. And I guess that's why we're all here. As Mike said, the Corporate Council is a group of 24 businesses and nonprofits based in the Upper Valley. Our membership includes most of the large organizations and collectively a very high percentage of the Upper Valley employment base. 3 years ago, we made a commitment to address the shortfall of affordable workforce housing in our region. This has included providing financial resources, speaking at planning board and city council meetings, and overall bringing greater visibility to this increasingly acute problem. As part of this, earlier this year, we retained Evernorth to conduct a feasibility study to explore the possibility of creating a fund dedicated to developing housing that supports our current and future employees, focusing on those who make between $16 and $25 per hour, or the equivalent of 60 to 80% of the region's average median income. While the concept of the fund is still very much on the drawing board, we want to share this as an example of how some area employers are thinking about the problem of workforce housing. It's now my pleasure to introduce Nancy Owens, the president of Evernorth. She'll take a few minutes to describe Evernorth and the work they're doing on the Corporate Council's behalf. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much for that introduction, Clay. And Evernorth is a community development organization, and we're working across northern New England. And we were just created last summer, so you may not recognize our name, but we were created through the merger of two longstanding organizations that you may be familiar with, Housing Vermont, based in Burlington, and Northern New England Housing Investment Fund out of Portland, Maine. And together, we've raised over $1 billion from local and regional banks and invested those funds to create over 13,000 affordable housing units in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. And we also finance growing businesses in low-income areas to support new jobs. So in addition to financing projects, we are also a real estate developer and have developed over 6,000 apartments in Vermont. And in this region, the Upper Valley, we regularly work with Twin Pines Housing Trust. And we're also currently financing the new apartments at Heater Landing that the Lebanon Housing Authority is starting construction soon on. And so we really, we love this work, and we love working with communities to help them to address the need for capital, housing, and jobs. And that's why we were excited to accept the challenge that the Corporate Council put before us and ask this question of what can employers do to invest their own resources, time, and money to foster the development of workforce housing in the region. As Clay said, we're working on a feasibility study. We set up a process to gather some information about the needs and opportunities for new housing, and certainly all the work of the Keys to the Valley have been really informative. And then we evaluated various lending and investing strategies with the steering committee to understand their goals, and also gathered information talking to dozens of people around the region, including employers, developers, municipal officials from both New Hampshire and Vermont, real estate professionals, and the planning community. And so the idea that we are working on is to raise capital that developers can use to finance mixed income rental housing. And this patient equity-like capital or loan capital be available in exchange for setting below market rents for some of the apartments in their properties. And we've spent a lot of time sort of doing financial models about the loan fund, looking at various structures, talking with potential investors about their needs and what they're looking for, and looking at sample development pro formas to understand how that would all come together. We've drawn a few conclusions that we can share with you, and we're, as we said, still in the process. But As Clay said, we're really, just to be clear, we're focused on rental housing and on really housing with a priority for people earning between $16 and $25 an hour. We're looking, again, at a geographic solution. So we're looking at financing developments throughout the Upper Valley region. And there was some talk about location and how that matters. We are interested in a location that's accessible to services, jobs, internet, water, and sewer infrastructure. But we need to weigh the cost and benefits of developing in those very core towns that are where land is a little bit more expensive, but the amenities and the jobs are very close, versus working in the towns where folks are outside of the immediate employment center and are still within a reasonable commuting distance. But we're looking at those options. We're looking to finance both new construction, so adding those new units that we've been talking about, but also interested in the acquisition of existing rental housing where we're able to preserve affordability and really prevent rent escalation, because that's also occurring. We think that right now is a terrific time to be doing this work and making investments, that there's a great opportunity to leverage a lot of new federal programs and resources that are coming in to our states and in terms of recovery programs and funds, and that leveraging these local resources with even existing programs like the various tax credit programs that are available in both states and through the federal government are also is a strategy we want to explore. Also just want to say, like, this is not going to work for every developer or every transaction. This new funding source, it needs to be, we need to work early with the developers to structure the loan capital for them in a way that works for them and helps them achieve their goals, and also works for the investor and helps them achieve the goals of affordability. So it's going to be really important to work with developers at the earliest stages of their financing so we can work together to structure the transaction and meet all of our goals and get that affordability impact that we're really looking for. So our next steps, we're actively wanting to speak to developers and towns and landowners and others who can help us to create that pipeline of opportunities and have those conversations. And also we'll be engaging with the employers and talking more about what does that investment look like and looking for commitments. So that's where we're headed. Thanks.
Wow, thanks, Nancy, and thank you, Clay. It's pretty exciting that people are looking at, our employers looking, how can we be directly invested, partner with our local developers. It's ways we can do things together that enable things that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And it's reasonable, we're hearing about those kind of partnerships. We ask what might towns do? And so Matt Osborne from Hartford's here to tell us about a zoning change that they're working on and why they're doing that.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning. I'm Matt Osborne. I'm a town planner for the town of Hartford. I've worked for Hartford for 24 years. I'd like to tell you a little bit about a recent zoning change that we've made in Hartford. Back in 2018 and 19, we were working on the update of the town plan. We held a series of community forums, and we heard a reoccurring theme from the public that we should look at creating more opportunities for mixed use development, which is residential and commercial development in the same building, and to rethink the strict segregation of uses in many of our commercial zoning districts. Following adoption of the town plan, we received inquiries from several property owners looking to create residential and mixed use development in 2 areas of Hartford. These areas did not permit residential or mixed use development. Those areas were a sizable commercial zoning district on Route 4 in Quechee, and a much smaller area at the intersection of Route 4 and 5 in White River Junction. Starting with Quechee, the slide we have here is a land use map of Quechee and the Highway Commercial Zoning District, which consists of 54 acres and was, again, a straight commercial zoning district that did not allow mixed use or residential development. It's located at the junction of Route 4 in Waterman Hill and Quechee Heartland Road. It's just up the hill from the Quechee Covered Bridge in the heart of Quechee Village. The district also included West Gilson Avenue, home of the Mid-Vermont Christian School, and several vacant parcels. The proposal included creating a new zoning district, the Quechee Commercial Residential District. The proposed district would make single unit and 2-unit dwellings permitted uses, and multi-unit dwellings and mixed use development conditional uses. Since there is town water and town sewer in the area, densities would be up to 12.4 units per acre. With the zoning change, there would be increased opportunities for housing and mixed use development near the heart of Quechee Village. And going to the next slide, on the east side of Route 5 by the intersection with Route 4, there's 5 parcels that combined make up just 2¼ acres. The area was zoned industrial commercial. It did not allow residential or mixed use development. And we proposed creating a new zoning district called the Highway Commercial Residential. It would make single unit, 2-unit permitted use, and multi-unit and mixed use. I'm sorry, multi-unit dwellings and mixed use development would be a conditional use. Again, we have town water and town sewer available, and we would allow densities up to 12.5 units per acre. Again, with the zoning change, it would create more opportunities for housing. Our process, last year, over a period of several months, staff had discussions with property owners who were interested in either mixed use or residential development. Staff met frequently amongst ourselves and developed recommendations for the changes. Once we agreed on the details, we scheduled workshops with the Planning Commission last fall. The Planning Commission supported the changes, and the next step was to present the proposed changes to the public. In January and February, we held 3 community meetings, which resulted in support for the changes. So we next moved forward to the adoption process and scheduled public hearings with the Planning Commission and Select Board. Having public support and lacking opposition, the Planning Commission and Select Board voted unanimously to approve the zoning amendments. The changes became effective in April, and they provide opportunities for housing that were not previously available. And we're hopeful that these changes will result in more housing in Hartford in the coming years. Lessons that we learned from this, there's no such thing as perfect zoning. As planners, we need to constantly work to adapt zoning to the changing needs in our communities. We have a serious housing crisis, and we need solutions. Fine-tuning zoning is one option, but community support is really key. Next steps for us in Hartford, we're currently working on the update of our housing chapter of our town plan. We're going to be working with the Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Commission. We're excited about working to improve housing opportunities in Hartford. At the same time, we'll also be looking at other commercial zoning districts to consider opportunities to create more mixed use and residential development. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. That is great to hear that you've got this public support and you've got people who want to create the homes and businesses that they can walk to and get around in their village, or get around in a village. It's pretty impressive, and commend you all for taking the lead and moving on that. It's one of the dozens of ways that are included in the Keys package for how towns can be involved in making it easier for the creation of homes. And we can also ask, talked about earlier, what can residents do? What can organizations do to welcome newcomers and to help people remain in the communities they love? It's not all about building new stuff. And Deanna Jones from the Thompson Senior Center is here to tell us about an approach that can use resources we already have.
Hi, everyone. My name is Deanna Jones. I'm the Executive Director for the Thompson Senior Center in Woodstock, Vermont. And excuse me, I've come down with this bad summer cold, and I'll try to make myself squeak through this for you. I also have with me Shari Borzakowski, who is our resource coordinator at the Thompson and very well versed in the Thompson Home Share program as well. If I start a coughing fit, she'll be on. So just a little bit of background about the Thompson Senior Center and who we are. We're a multi-purpose senior center located in Woodstock, Vermont. We serve about 1,500 older adults annually with programs, wellness activities, transportation, home delivered meals, and a wide variety of resources to age well at home and in your community. 4 years ago, we implemented our Aging at Home program as a part of our strategic plan in response to the need and desire of our community to have one number to call for any type of aging at home support. We offer vetted referrals for any type of need, from caregivers and housekeepers to legal services and home modifications. And as I mentioned, Shari is with us, and she's our resource coordinator for that type of service. One need we've seen repeatedly over the years is the desire for folks to remain in their homes and community, but also being overwhelmed by the basic tasks of staying in their home. Things like lawn mowing or snow shoveling, but even sometimes just the worry of being alone at night. And we often hear the desire to stay in one's own community, but without the ability to downsize or move to a more manageable property within their community. And this is what led us to talk about home share, along with many community efforts related to housing in our area. We feel that home share addresses two key issues affecting our community. Affordable housing, of course, and the large number of community residents living alone in houses that may be difficult for them to afford and maintain, and or the desire for some assistance or companionship in their home. The next slide, please. So using the proven model developed by Home Share Vermont, our goal is to offer a shared housing program that matches homeowners in the community with community members seeking housing. The matching process emphasizes mutual safety and compatibility of the homeowner and home sharer. We've implemented a clear set of procedures, including background checks, applicant interviews, and reference checks, and are using forms adapted from the Home Share Vermont model to ensure that homeowners and home sharers in the program are secure and compatible in their matching. I think it's also important to point out that we don't in any way see this as a live-in caregiver type of situation, which is something that comes up often. It's not a around-the-clock caregiver type of role in any way, and we do make that clear to those who are interested. So the timing of this, where we're at, well, we were ready to kick this off last March. COVID delayed our start, and we've now restarted with sort of a soft pilot. We're not yet recruiting broadly. We seem to have more interest, obviously, from people looking for a place than those who are ready to share their home. But we are following up with all of those who have expressed interest over the past year and a half or so, and we're reaching out to participants who might be home sharing candidates. We're including information in our newsletter about this resource, and ready to start making those matches as the right people come along. So that's where we're at in our project, and we welcome any questions, either Shari or I, after this presentation. And thank you for including us in this important discussion.
Thanks, Deanna. And thanks for powering through a summer cold. Yeah. I hope you feel better soon. Cup of tea might help. It's really good to hear that you're getting this effort going. And clearly the need is out there, or the demand is out there. You know, people want to, they want to be able to meet their own needs, and they want to benefit the community by their continued presence and by creating space for a new neighbor. And it's pretty exciting that Thompson's enabling that to happen. Are there other ways that we can support the use of existing structures to create more affordable places to live? There are, and Paul Mortarano from Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust has helped some of that happen in the end of last year. So Paul's here today to tell us about a rehabilitation program they did that turned some dilapidated places into nice places to live at affordable rents.
Hi, I'm Paul Moderano. I'm the Multifamily Rental Improvement Program Coordinator at the Wyndham and Windsor Housing Trust. And basically, yeah, this program took some, I don't see any slides up or on my screen. So, oh yeah, so basically the rehousing recovery program was called. It seems to be like a kind of a coalition of a lot of things that have been spoken about today, of public funding, which came down through the CARES Act stimulus package into the state. You know, it made its way through HUD and the ACCD, and then the Department of Housing and Community Development sort of wrote this grant for which provided up to $30,000 per unit to bring vacant rental units in Vermont up to code. And some of the things that were, were already mentioned is, housing shortages and we have some of the oldest housing in the country, actually. So not only do we have a shortage, but the housing that we have, a lot of it has what we would, refer to as deferred maintenance. And so, this really helped. I noticed it says that 70 units about 70 units in the Wyndham and Windsor counties are in the pipeline around, and so the 2020 money is still available. We got an extension so that people could commit to completing these projects. So hopefully, by the end of it all, we'll have more than 70 units created in the two counties. And just to show one example, if you guys would hit the next slide. So this is one of the examples, and as we were showing in houses in communities, and there is a number of challenges, and and one of them is that a house is basically kind of a little, let me wax poetic here for a bit, but it's a member of the community as well, And this particular project is right on Route 44, which cuts right through Windsor, and it goes up to West Windsor and into Ascutney, and then down into the town of Windsor. So, and the hospital is close by, and but it's also has a lot of great amenities around it. It's close to schools, close to recreation areas, hiking trails are there, and so there. But it was really kind of a blight, to the neighborhood looking the way it is. And so, being a member of the community, if you show the next slide, there was some. The property owner here, who was a private property owner, just rehabbed. We provided a $30,000 grant. I believe he spent per unit well over $70,000 per unit. So, so the money coming from the federal government, we provided it to the private owners, and the private owners have also, really pitched in to help this project along. And the key is that they had to rent to folks from the what the continuum of care. I don't know if everybody's familiar with that, but that's basically the main objective was to try to house individuals who are currently residing in the motels. They have nowhere, the state-funded motel program, which operates mainly in the winter. This is one of the tricks to that one. But so here's some of the work in progress. Next slide, so you can see there's a worker in the corner there. He all new systems in this, all new insulation. So there's energy efficiency here. The systems are brand new. The owners are paying for heat, electric, and hot water according to like the HUD gross rent. They need to pay for heat, hot water, and electric. And in some cases, they can either pay or reduce the rent. And but here we have all new systems. So whoever pays for the heat in this house is going to have a bit of a break just for the energy efficiency and things like that, which is also sort of a goal in Vermont. And so here it is. Can I get to the next slide, please? That's some of the stuff. And so here's a completed, and this is the brand new apartment that, some examples of it that we see. And, I know personally about some of these units. There were people that, to plug the continuum of care here, there are people that have had struggling. I've been in the community working in different aspects of housing and homelessness. And so I know that there are people that were in the community having trouble finding housing. And in fact, one of the people that showed up on a lease, I can't mention where or when or who, but one of the people that did show up on a lease somewhere was actually a person that I personally knew who could not get into, housing for one reason or another. And, a private landlord was, said, hey, I got to do this. I'm taking a chance. And he was able to take a chance on this person and who now has a home. And and a nice one at that. So it's, so these are some of the things that we have. And so some of what I've seen, I think that, this rehousing program is just a great example of public and private teamwork. And, some of the other challenges we heard today are, like transportation and things like that. I think we can also agree that, everything is needed. We need a real holistic approach to solve this challenge. So that's about it.
Well, thanks, Paul. It's great to hear that you got landlords who are, I think, still have some in the pipeline from the 2020 money. And I think you told me that there's a line of people who would love to do more or to also, turn other empty places into livable spaces if there's more funds available. So I know that went into our budget in Vermont, and hopefully the legislation to enable that to happen is going to work out pretty soon too. I look to the legislators to call on work on that. And I'd go a little further. It's great when you can have the sort of public funding with somebody who's got the time and the skills and to do something. But some people might need a little more help, and with things like the design work and getting permits and financing, and how do you manage a contractor and manage the project, and then even once you've got the place made, how do you find a tenant, how do you do the lease up arrangements, and how do you do the property management in an ongoing way. And so for those of us like me who don't have all those skills, Vermont State Housing Agency is trying out a pilot that might help us out. And Tyler Moss is here to tell us about an ADU pilot. So all yours, Tyler.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. It is Vermont State Housing Authority, just for the record.
When you might take to go.
Hello? I'll wait for that background noise to. Okay, yes. So I've also come down with something called for the past year. It's called emergency rental assistance. So forgive me if I explode at any moment. But I'm here today not to talk about rental assistance, which is very exciting. I'm here to talk about accessory dwelling units and the Montpelier ADU program. The program started in August of 2019, and by March of 2020, we had one project completed and occupied, 2 projects under construction, and 3 in the permitting phase. Around the middle of March, things changed drastically, and homeowners became more reticent about sharing their home and property. Contractors became impossible to find, and as we know, the world changed. So we have, it's slowed down a lot over the past year, so it's not a good example year of the type of growth that an ADU program with dedicated personnel and funds can help to create accessory dwelling units in communities. But we are back on track, and the reason I have a slide up here mostly showing the money is because some people think of the ADUs, they see a television show where someone built an ADU in their backyard out of pallets for $5,000, and they're like, great, I want one of those. And that's not reality, right? We all know that construction projects take twice as long and cost twice as much as you think, no matter if you're building a freestanding ADU or if you're renovating your bathroom. So that's a lot of the reality check we initially set out and had, when we started advertising about the program, we had, 50 people called in the first 2 weeks. We were blown away. And as we went and started meeting with these people, it got down to those 5 or so that we were, in the very beginning. So it is almost a 10-to-1 ratio of people who really want to do this and people who can do this. So it's important to know that ADUs do cost a substantial amount of money. Construction is expensive, and unfortunately, it's only getting worse. We knew this going into it, and so we knew that we'd need a significant amount of money to get this pilot up and running. And we decided to go with the most restrictive funding possible because I love a challenge, and we accessed the Community Development Block Grant Program, which gracefully, I hope nobody's on here, Josh is gonna wring my neck, but anyway, it was the best way to find a big chunk of money. However, as we know, that comes with a lot of restrictions. That program, that the Community Development Block Grant did provide up to $20,000 grants to homeowners upon completion of the project. And that was based on a reimbursement of 50% of the cost. So if they had only spent $20,000 on the unit, they would only be eligible for a $10,000 reimbursement grant. However, if they spend $40,000, they'd get up to 20 and on up. They'd still be stuck at the $20,000. But that is a significant incentive for homeowners. And we find that there's a certain psychology of an incentive that really brings people to the table to say, oh, right, there's money available. I've been thinking about doing this project for a long time. So it's really important for communities who are thinking about creating ADU projects to have some incentives on the table other than just saying, we've made zoning easier. That's one thing, and that's great. And Vermont has done a really good job of making some statewide changes, and a lot of local municipalities have made even bigger changes. They have to. It's either the state level or more. But having some incentives available was important. We also found that people needing money up front was important. So the Vermont State Housing Authority put their skin in the game, and we started the ADU Enable Loan Program that has a $100,000 budget and provides a loan of up to $10,000 at the onset of the program. And that's a 0% interest loan that has a 5-year term. So people are able to pay that off. It's $166 a month for 5 years and change in the last month. So that was a big incentive for people to get that little bit of money to get going, and also having you know, myself and we had one admin helping out for people getting ready to plan for these projects was very important, because people have a lot of questions. You know, they don't understand all the zoning requirements, and and each town is different. So it's something that is it doesn't necessarily transfer from town to town. We started this. I started out working with the Brattleboro Area Affordable Housing in their apartments and homes program, and Brattleboro had been doing this for a while when I started, so they were really just accepting of ADUs and pushing them through as quickly as possible, waiving everything they could just to get these things built, because they knew how well they worked in our community down there. And so we had, by the time I left, I think they created about 54 units down there over the course of whatever it was, 15 years or something. So that's where we started out, moved it up to Montpelier. The city of Montpelier also threw in a grant of $50,000, and that was more of a flexible fund, because it came out of the city, their housing trust fund. So they were able to fund part of what the community, the CDBG money did not, which was freestanding units as well as additions, because our program only allowed for internal conversions, ADUs. So I mean, to be funded with the grant from the Department of Housing. So that was important to have that, because a lot of people did want to do the freestanding, see those pictures in Dwell magazine or whatever, and they're like, oh, that's what I want in my backyard. They don't realize that ADU costs $300,000. But that's what people like. They go for that. So that was some flexible funding from the city of Montpelier, and they've been great at helping to push these things through to get these programs, these projects started. I guess we can move to the next slide. This is well, it's 1.5 projects in my slides, but as you can see here in the lower left-hand corner, starting in the wrong place as usual, this was a home in Montpelier. Homeowner had been there for a while and had thought to build an ADU to supplement the income as in retirement was coming. So we started the project, and this one again we had to tap into that Montpelier money, because it was a change of footprint. And you can see the way it bumped out from the side of the house right there. They actually took the bay window that was on the side of the house and put it on the front of the ADU. And the upper left-hand corner is the interior of that unit. There's a bedroom off of that, and on the left-hand side, and then also a bathroom there. And in the basement, they've actually created sort of this an office workspace. When COVID hit, everything changed, and this woman who thought that she was going to be renting this out for supplemental income actually ended up moving into the ADU, so that her daughter, who had lost her housing, her daughter and family, to a couple of children, needed a place to go. They also suddenly were not able to afford their rent and didn't know what to do, were losing their housing. So they moved into the main house, and and mom moved into the ADU. And I think that's just a great example of how ADUs are flexible, how they could go from being a rental unit to being something that you lived in. And here I will just freak everybody out here by saying, and also potentially a short-term rental. Also up in the upper right-hand corner, you can see that was a brand new project. That was just one that's a little more of that modern flair that people see. That was a conversion over a garage. Didn't have a great chance to fit a before and after into that. But on the next slide, you can see these are some of our active projects that we have now, and it shows some of the variations on ADUs. Like the one on the upper left is a freestanding. That was an old, garage detached dwelling from the house already there, sort of had everything in place, had electricity, did not have plumbing, but now the upper part and part of the lower area will be turned into a living area. And then on the upper right, there was a basement, which has been turned into a nice walkout basement. So it was existing space. And in the lower right, you see that that yellow house on the left-hand side there, that was actually sort of almost an in-law type area. It had a bedroom, a little sitting room, and a bathroom. And so that was something that was very ready to become an ADU by sectioning it off from the house. The way our project worked, because of the CDBG money, was that we had to also be under the 80% AMI. We had two ways of determining eligibility. One was that the owner could be eligible at the onset of the program, and then we'd meet our beneficiary in that way. If the owner was above the 80% of AMI, then they would need to rent to someone who was below 80%. That eligibility was determined at, I don't know if that's me.
I think Doreen's going to help us out by muting Alicia if she can.
Okay.
It's not allowing me
apologies.
to mute, so hopefully we're okay.
So anyway, the eligibility was for the renter is also determined at the onset. So that was one thing that we wanted to get in there, so that if the person did go above 80% AMI, right, they didn't lose their housing. So we'd encourage people to get more income from their employment as they stay in one place. If it did turn over, then we would do an eligibility determination at that time as well. One of the things that we did, and literally on March 16th of 2020, I was set to meet with the head of the architectural drafting program at Vermont Tech and his class at the unit in the upper left hand, that freestanding garage structure, because we had worked on a partnership with Vermont Tech to have their students do free design for the class. What they would do is come in, do an initial visit, come and then speak with the homeowner about their ideas, come back with a plan, talk to the homeowner, here's what we're thinking. The homeowner would make some changes. They would go back and do a final, and then do a presentation in the classroom, actually in front of the homeowner. So the homeowner would end up getting free design drawings and specs, as well as the chance to work with all these students, and the students would get real world experience working within the constraints of a budget and a real project. And the community would get a home, and there'd be a renter. And so there was just so many wins across the board. I got an email at 6:30 in the morning on March 16th saying, I don't think we can make it today. So that has changed. However, we had started that based on working with the Career Center, which is also, I think, in some towns they call it the Tech Center in high schools. So a lot of these areas have that, and I think it's a resource that people need to consider for free design work. Getting students involved also helps people stay in the community, because these people who are taking architecture courses, right, they all think they're going to be designing libraries and hospitals and museums, and most of them are going to be doing internal conversions of homes, because that's where a lot of the work is. So finding that, getting students interested in it, also helps keep people in Vermont, which is something that will contribute to our state. And but then again, more people staying means more housing needed. So I know we'll probably have a lot of questions. This is a very brief overview of the ADU program, and I'm happy to answer questions at any point.
Thanks, Tyler. I think the creative partnership that you just described with students, you know, and working with homeowners, treating each case as an individual, you know, what do they need? How are they going to meet the requirements? That's the sort of creativity that can make something like this work. And as we transition to questions, you know, I noticed there was one in the chat about this saying, well, what's the similar program in New Hampshire? And I kind of put that back, you know, is the thought, I guess I'd throw out that maybe we don't need to wait for a state program. We've already talked on this call about local investment. We've talked about the partnerships we have locally in communities. What can towns do? Where's their property? Where are their homes? Where are their interested landlords? You know, property owners. So maybe we can meet a lot of the requirements by being creative ourselves. And I appreciate all these examples. So we had a pretty active chat, we'll call it chat storm, but chat interaction happening. And so this is our time to bring some of those questions up. Some will be answered by presenters, you know, we've got the slide up with everybody's contact information. We'll be sending out these slides later again, so that'll be available to everyone. But I'll look at some of the questions that have come along recently. One was really, I guess, talking about involving community, the role of second homes. And Kevin, you've talked a little bit about this. So maybe you want to start with what are the roles of second homes in our communities? How can we engage people who might be owners of second homes in being part of you know, having a vital community and meeting our housing needs for everybody?
So second homes are, you know, are a traditional part of many of our communities. It's not a bad thing. Like anything else, you know, you have to do things in moderation. And so conversion of existing primary units to second homes has issues in terms that it takes out housing stock, especially if it's being converted as just as a short-term rental, because then its valuation goes up, which drives up neighbors' property values as well. And it's not necessarily contributing to the local economy. It's maybe just be kind of withdrawing cash from the local economy. And so those things are important to figure out. There are taxation ways. We think that people can deal with that, that kind of discourage conversion or tax things at higher rates. If you're going to treat it like a hotel, well, maybe we should tax it like a hotel. But there's also stuff where a bunch of those units could have ADUs in them, where somebody's living there all the time, and maybe that helps out. You know, you're a landowner from away, and you'd like somebody to be watching your place a little bit. And so there are opportunities there in those second homes to potentially create additional units that are useful for our residents.
So I would just like to jump in there for quickly, if possible, because that is something that I've been pushing for, because there are so many second homes in Vermont, and they already are vacation homes, right? So they are being rented out. So we'd be turning them into, we'd be creating housing in our community by allowing people to turn them into ADUs, and that's something I've been pushing for a long time. And it's a contentious subject, how to work with that. But we know we can't keep the tourists out of Vermont. We need them, and if we can let them build our housing for us, thumbs up in my book.
Thanks, Tyler, and thanks, Kevin. I loop back, there's a couple of questions that have come in around the role of regional collaboration. And one of them around, you know, the Planning Commission saying, hey, can we ask each town to set a target for what they might do over the next decade or so? Another question earlier on about the fact that, you know, if we're trying to do this one by one, town by town, you know, we're not likely to make much, it's not likely to be much different than it has been. So how can we how can we collaborate and have this sort of collective bargaining power that does enable us to empower workforce to negotiate, for supplies, to actually have a kind of shared plan. And so, Jason, Olivia, Kevin, I'll maybe start with you again as you represent the planning commissions. Where can we go with a Keys to the Valley that does help us work regionally and therefore, meet this as a regional challenge rather than struggling on our own?
Sure. And I can't see everybody out there, so Jason and Olivia jump on too. The first off, our project somewhat has it right now, and we'll be refining it with the new census numbers later. But there is the idea that each town has a target number of affordable units, and we can kind of suss that out of the data out there. However, in small towns, it's a very small number. In bigger towns, it's a bigger number. We also believe that you can't shift really your housing responsibility. You can't kind of go, well, we're an expensive town, so people shouldn't live here. They should all go live in the cheap town and come work in our town. Well, because that's morally reprehensible, right? So let's not do that. However, there are lots of places where there are areas right on the edge of towns where, we may need a sewer line to cross a town over, or maybe the town's going to plow over into this weird little road that's in another town. And so there's lots of places where towns should be talking, and towns should be talking to each other all the time anyways. But I don't know if Olivia and Jason have more stuff out there.
Before Olivia and Jason jump in, Allison's got her hand up, and lots of people pointed that out to me. Thank you for helping. It's hard to see us all, each of us. So Allison, if you'd like to go ahead on this issue too, and we'll get Jason and Olivia to partner with you.
Well, thanks. This has been terrific. Thank you all. It's so great to see so many faces I've come to respect and admire, and this many great minds being brought to bear on this crisis. It can't be a crisis for too long if all of you are addressing it. So my first question is, and I just have to say, it's the most exciting thing to have $190 million in our budget this year dedicated to housing, a whole range of housing. We have never spent that much money on housing. So money is coming our way, which is really thrilling, as most of you know. But I have two kind of funny, just specific questions. One is to Nancy and Clay, and maybe I was distracted when Oliver brought me more breakfast, but is there a goal for the Evernorth and Corporate Council? Is there a goal for that financing fund? That's question one. And question two is a kind of slightly awkward one, but as you know, I live in Woodstock, and our tipping point is getting very scary about the number of seasonal residents. And, we have a notion of a healthy amount of families should pay for housing, 30%. Nobody should pay more than 30% for housing. So what's a healthy tipping point for a town in terms of number of seasonal residents for a town? I put that out there because I think it's actually something we need to address, because our towns are being gutted by two challenges, particularly the gold towns: seasonal residents and short-term rentals. And it's a real challenge, and they're great benefits, as we all know, but they're also huge challenges to our human infrastructure in a town. So those are my two questions.
Thanks, Allison. Nancy, do you want to tackle that first one about the goal? I mean, it's more units, but it's kind of a depends, which is often often what happens.
Yeah, as we, I mean, we would like to, we want to do as much as we can. We think we can start with a goal of creating somewhere between 150 and 300 of units of affordable housing. And those would be, that may actually be talking about 500 or 600 total units of housing, but we're talking about mixed income housing. So it's hard to answer the exact goal as a number of units. The investments to support acquiring and preserving a home versus constructing a new one is going to take a different amount of money to do those two different things. I think one of our goals is can we raise say $10 million locally from local investments that we can then leverage and use towards creating those new housing units. So it's both how much can we raise locally, where do we direct it, and how quickly we can deploy it. But so we think that's a big impact. Allison, when I looked at when you look at how many affordable homes are in the community now, you know, homes that are in rentals that are serving the workforce, that have rent restrictions, I think there are about 500 or so in the region. And so if you think about if we could create 200, 300 more, that's quite a big lift. Though I know on the number side, we're talking about, I don't know how many thousands and thousands of units are needed. But several folks have talked about this incremental approach, right? The ADU, the shared housing. We've just got to keep increasing the number.
Thanks, Nancy. Any weigh in on the on your second question, Allison? Or Allison's second question about other ways to engage the community in and second home ownership. I think Kevin, go ahead.
I think I've talked with Allison about this a little before, but it's going to come down probably to a state legislative stuff, probably around taxation. Because all else being equal, if you can make a ton of money doing that, you know, people are going to make a ton of money doing that. We shouldn't be surprised. So you have to stop them from making a ton of money doing that, or put caps on there or other things. And again, it's not a bad thing. It's a thing that maybe a lot of residents can use to help themselves stay in town. But it's something that needs care and moderation.
Thanks. There's another question here about a couple of questions around, I'll call it grassroots engagement, you know, and mobilizing our citizen planning boards. Most of the towns, you know, where the people are planners are volunteers, busy people, and some are on this call, many are not. And we also have a lot of people in our town who are, you know, small trades. You know, how do we, are there structures within Keys to the Valley or in Tyler within your ADU model or in our home share? You know, how do we tap into the resource and then also provide the education and support to people? You know, we've talked about zoning change. You know, how do you get that popularity for, you know, it's not, if you got a citizen zoning board, you know, who's got a little bit of time to look at an issue, how do we help them enable things and then engage their neighbors in making a difference? Thoughts on that from their home share or ADU program or Paul, your work? You've done a lot.
Actually, you know, I wouldn't. You know, we talked about, you know, some government intervention, and you know, I know that in a town I live in, Chester here, and I've seen, since I've been here about 10 years now, I've seen a growth in this type of housing, people second homes and Airbnbs and things like that. So, I mean, I think it's a tricky situation because you don't want to discourage that. You know, there's about 5 places you can ski around here, so that's really what it is. You know, it's bringing people up to do that. So maybe, you know, with some government intervention, maybe some higher taxes or whatever, but maybe creating some sort of incentive for the people that are buying second homes to turn those single family homes into multi-unit homes, you know, which, you know, converting a old Victorian to a that's only one single family, sometimes it can be a matter of popping up a couple of walls, adding a kitchen and a bathroom, and you know, and you have another unit right there, and then you can create a whole unit that's annual, you know, annual rented and still come up and enjoy your vacation home, you know. And so it's just going to take a lot of different, you know, thinking. And like someone mentioned earlier, there's a lot of minds here that with creative ideas. And I'm loving what I'm hearing today. So someone else speak, in fact.
Thank you, Paul. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I see Elizabeth Burlos has her hand up, so we'll give her the last question, but if there's another answer to that, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add a little bit to what Paul was saying. And I think a lot of the models really showed how residents can be involved in many different capacities. And I just wanted to mention one tool in the Keys to the Valley toolbox that is a priority for us moving forward, is likely to be, is a local renovation or developer utility that really gets at helping homeowners become developers, whether that's through renovation or adding an ADU, through improvements or connecting to contractors. And that's also a way for our local contractors to get involved and help make these things happen on a smaller scale and kind of crowdsource some of these incremental options that might make it more affordable to do on a larger scale. Because we all know that building one by one is hard, but if we can try to support each other in doing it. So there's a lot of different options, and I'm glad that many of them have been highlighted today, but we hope that local utility might be another new option moving forward that we'll look into more.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, the Brattleboro area affordable housing. So having a small, local board, dedicated people who are there to help people makes a huge difference. Part of our exit strategy from the Montpelier pilot program, as we look to expand, is the creation of the Sustainable Montpelier Coalition. That's not my thing, but I'm working with Barbara Conray there, and she's heading that up, and we're trying to bring the ADUs into that. So creating that group of local people that are dedicated to helping is a really important part of that process, especially with the ADUs.
Thanks, Tyler.
Mike, Mike, could I just chime in? I think on the question of sort of the volunteerism and the role of, regional planning and so forth. I mean, I think the key point that I want to throw out there is that Kevin, Olivia, and myself, we exist to help towns out. And, volunteer board members are asked to do increasingly more complex things. And, we're here to help, basically. And the Keys project does have a few things, that we hope are helpful for you. For example, there's like a checklist that you could do, like an audit of your zoning and that sort of thing. And, some of that might be helpful, but the bottom line is call us, email us. We're here to help you through it. And I just want to throw that out there because the volunteer board members' jobs are getting harder every day.
Thank you, Jason. Representative Burrows, we're running out of time for the questions. So if you wouldn't mind putting it in the chat, I'll try to make sure we get the answer back to you. Thank you. I'd be grateful for that. Doreen, can you pop us up with the last couple of slides? Yeah, so next steps and how do we measure progress? These are great questions. People are obviously motivated here, want to do something, and it's a really, really big challenge that we need many more people than us to solve. So how do we get going? And the key thing is actually to pick a piece that you can work on and to work on it. And maybe you've seen that piece today. Maybe you need to think a little more. Well, pop over to the Keys to the Valley toolbox and see what you see there if you need some more inspiration. And for tracking our progress, over the last decade, we have been counting the homes we've been creating over the last decade. And we've got that count available. You can click the link in the slides when you get it. But we'll be continuing that count to see what we're doing and publishing that through Keys. So I'm going to ask, well, I guess one other thing I need, the next slide, if you bring it up, Doreen, that whatever piece of the puzzle you choose to work on, you are not alone. This slide shows just a few of the organizations that are investing their time and energy and funds because they have faith and confidence in each other and in us that we can do this. So pick your piece and join these leaders and be on the leaderboard. We can do this together. So I'm going to pass it over to Andrew, and he's going to wrap all this great thinking up into one fabulous synopsis. Is that's going to happen, Andrew?
I'm gonna try, Mike.
Good
morning, everyone. Andrew Winter, Executive Director at Twin Pines Housing. It is so great to have 130 people here this morning talking about housing. It's something that I know Mike, the folks at Vital Communities, and I, and a whole lot of people have a lot of passion for. So it's great to see the energy. Partnerships are key. Here's an example. This is a 4-unit project that we just finished. We're moving people into this weekend. 4 units in Wilder on a remediated brownfield site, completed this week. Takes lots of partners: Mascoma Bank, VHFA, Two Rivers, Evernorth, Green Mountain Economic Development. We're all partners in making this happen, along with others of the state of Vermont. Those partnerships are critically important. Don't be afraid to think and reach out for partners. Next slide. And these approaches that you heard about today, it's great to hear them because it's a wonderful example. Clearly, all kinds of housing are needed. I love the housing fund because there's a real need for particularly that sort of missing middle. I had somebody call me up, ask me, what's the wait list up at Guile Hill where we have some moderate income units? 2 years, 22 folks on the wait list, 2-year wait list for some of those moderate income rental units there. Mixed income zoning changes, home shares, rehab units, accessory dwelling units, all these are going to be part of the solution. So grab onto something. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Vital Communities. Thanks. Good job, everyone. But find a way to be involved. Thank you to our presenters today for your time, your energy, and thank you to everyone who joined us. We'll call it there, Mike.
All right. Great to be part of this breakfast. I hope it was satisfying. I'm looking forward to being together in person. It's coming. Hang in there and let's solve this challenge together. All right. Take care. Have a good morning, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah, great, everyone.
Good to see you all.
Great to be
Thank
seeing
you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, presenters. This was awesome. Really grateful.
That was great. Really good. Thank you. Very helpful, very informative, and lots to work on.
Yeah, I think we'll be busy. All right.
So Mike, I will share with you, I literally got a call from, and I'm sure you got a call too from the Valley News, and looking at this issue. And the reporter shared with me that she's actually going to be going, she couldn't find anything here. And she and her husband, who works at Dartmouth, are going to be living with family in central Vermont. And I was like, okay, that's a pretty good example of, how serious the challenge is, for moderate income.
That's our loss.
Yeah.
So
Thanks, everybody.
thanks, Sarah.
All right.